think if that's your take from that video, then it's a very no shade.
I'm sorry, I'm not hearing it.
You can't
Not hearing it.
Okay, cool.
You don't even have an opinion. If you heard it for the first time tonight, I'm not even hearing you.
Hello. So the way in which the night flows is that the debate part, the discussion part, consists of two parts. Firstly, we all go around and we give our rating of the album out of 5 and give a little bit of a reason why we kind of come to that decision. And then after we've kind of like gone around the room, we then kind of open up the room to a full-on debate, to where anyone outside can kind of pose a question, and then we all kind of like build upon that, and just kind of like have a great discussion, have a great debate.
Hello, I'm Sharifa, and I'm gonna rate her 4 out of 5. I think I'm gonna give her a 4. I think, as someone who's listened to Simz over the years, I think maybe the first time I saw her live was probably like 2015. So a while ago. And I think that she has been on a journey of self-discovery, and I feel like her message is reflective of that. I found that the messages on this current album were very much in tune with who she is as a person, in terms of very strong messages of pro-blackness, which I really related with. Her lyricism never in question from day one to now. Never in question. Sick lyricist, and I felt like that came across very well. I feel like there's very much bangers on this album, absolute bangers on this album. So I just think she's executed this very well. I feel like I can see the journey from where she started to where she is. She was doing very much like the hip hop only project at the beginning. Now you can see the Afro beats influence. You can see, she's a Nigerian girl, and I feel like she's bringing through more her cultural influence in that as well. And I think that's important. Like the song Woman that was brought up by my sisters over there, like big tune. Like we can all relate to that, and we can all feel ourselves in that, and it's important. And I feel like her message is on point. It's on time. And yeah, I just think Simz is just sick. Like I'm a massive fan of Simz. I feel like, yes, okay, there was tracks that were less engaging than others, but there was tracks that were absolute bangers on that album. So I'm going to give her a solid 4 out of 5. And yeah, keep up the good work, Simz. Sick. Yeah.
That's quite the endorsement.
Yeah. My name is Liam. I think that endorsement is well deserved. I'd give this album a 5 out of 5 personally. I kind of hear what Urban was saying about like a 5 out of 5 album being like life-changing. But for me personally, I don't think she could do any more on this project. I thought it was like, the production was really clean, and it was just like, it's just not, she's not pretending to be anyone or trying to make any particular type of song. It's just, this is what's going on internally, and it's going to spill out like this. And it kind of crosses over all these different genres, which makes it seem even more authentic. Like when she did that kind of Afrobeats tune, it wasn't like, I need to put this kind of song on my album. It was like, nah, that like Fela Kuti kind of influence. And those two songs, I couldn't even really tell where one started and the other one, like that one finished and the next one began. Like I had to check my phone and I realized, these are 2 different songs. And that's also that like Fela Kuti thing where the songs are bare long in it. So yeah, I really enjoyed the album, and I don't think there's anything more that she could have done. I really love it.
Hello, my name's Bazoo. Like many others have said, I really enjoy the subject matters that she talks about. She's very refreshing, relatable. It's rare to see like a female artist not really rely on their image, and rather the content and the lyrics. And I think the album is quality. Having said that, I would give it a 3.5. The only reason I wouldn't go higher is, as great as the album is, as Maya said, there were certain parts for me in the middle where it kind of like dipped, or it wasn't as gripping as the other tracks, which is the reason I'd give it that. But I think it's a great and important album.
As far as this album goes, I think it's a really good project, man. Like, it's really touched me in numerous ways. Like, I think with this project, there's so much sophistication. Not even so much the concepts that she's kind of tackling, but more so the marriage between her concepts, but also the musicality. You know, it's just a beautiful blend of music, and it's so refreshing to get an album like this from the UK, because it really kind of breaks a trend, I think, from what we're accustomed to, you know, to getting. And you know, she's been around for quite a while as well, so it's nice to know that she's finally getting her flowers, you know, as an artist. So at least for me, this album gets a strong 4 out of 5.
Hey, I'm Urban. My rating of it is a 3.5. I do think that the album is very, very good. I was really impressed by the lyrical content. As a lot of people said, I think that Little Simz is not following the trends of being overtly sexual, and she's really speaking from her experience, and I like the storytelling of her experiences. But I would rate 5 as a life-changing piece of work. So because I feel like some people, as I agree, some sentiments that people have said, you know, the latter half of the album, I think is it doesn't build to take the music anywhere else, even though it is such an amazing blend of music. I feel, you know, I could hear Fela Kuti, I could hear so many different influences, and what I felt was really shocked me was her lyrical ability and how she's changed her flow in many different songs, and how she could change the sound. You know, I really was inspired by that. But for me, I think that an album, a really great piece of work, you should not be able to listen to it in the background. It should really call to you, and when you feel it, you feel the emotions. You know, there's songs like that, and I just feel like, yeah, it didn't go to that level of impact, but I think it was really, really amazing, and I was really refreshed by it.
It's kind of that album, like, you listen to it the first time, you're like, ah, cool, and then you listen to it again, and then you deep the music, you hear the lyrics, you hear the beat, and you're like, ah, this rocks. So yeah, she's just amazing. Nothing else to say.
Hey, I'm Lena. I also only caught the last bit of the album, but I do listen to Little Simz quite a lot, like even from her other songs before this. So I'm going to rate it on like her previously to now. I would also give it a 3.5, just because I think it, like, whilst it is very good and I do listen to quite a few of the songs, I just think that there's, like, she hasn't hit her peak yet. And I also think, like, whilst you can tell she really thought about this and, like, made the effort to think about, like, what influences she wanted to bring in, I still think, like, I wasn't, like, listening to, like, a fully fledged artist. I thought she was still, like, relatively young.
Yeah, Jordan, and Charlie, I got to hit you with it. I can't actually comment or like rate the album simply because I made the mistake of not getting here on time. So I only managed to catch the last song. And I'll be honest with you, I'd never heard of Little Simz before you advertised the event.
No, it's really good. I think I'm gonna give this a 4.5 out of 5.
A 4.5.
A 4.5.
Wow.
I think the reason why is, like, this album's been very influential on me in the last few months. I've listened to it a lot, probably more than any other kind of newer album that I've kind of listened to generally. And I've been listening to hip-hop music for 17, 18 years now, consistently. And I think this album's probably one of the best when it comes to production, lyrics, content, structure, and what she's kind of trying to convey as a person. I think it's really real in terms of the stuff that she's addressing, from race to gender to sexuality to colonialism, our history of kind of empire and all this kind of stuff. there's a lot of kind of tones of activism and like doing that kind of community work, you know. Even in that like first song, there's like references to how they're knocking down properties, right, for regeneration, for this kind of like, yeah, man, gentrification. This is kind of what she's kind of talking about. She's kind of being very kind of grassroots and community kind of minded as almost as an activist, but conveying it in a way which is kind of almost universal, right?
Yeah.
There's like a real kind of like tone and kind of anthem almost that she's kind of speaking to. So I think this album, in that sense, as a cultural landmark almost, I think has kind of, for me anyway, shifted my consciousness in a certain kind of frequency. And I think that vibration that he was touching on there, I think Little Simz does kind of attract those kind of people to really listen and to go deeper into your experience, to kind of question things, right? To kind of be kind of politically minded or spiritually kind of aware. And I think it's often hard to kind of combine that kind of nous, the political awareness, with the kind of a spiritual consciousness. And I think she does it really well on this album. So yeah, have to give it a 4 out of 4.5.
My name's Maya. This is my first time listening to Little Simz, actually. And I have never listened to her album before. I really liked it. I thought it was quite refreshing to see an artist, a female artist particularly, speaking about different topics, you know, not about like men or getting men's money and stuff like that. I think the first half of the album really, really gripped me, but then kind of not so much towards the end, if I'm being honest. But I'll give it a solid 3 out of 5.
Hi, my name is Florence. I'm kind of torn between a 3 and a 4, just based on what everybody else is saying. In terms of, I think she's, in terms of her lyricist, very good. In terms of her message, very good. In terms of like her originality and able to capture what everybody else is feeling in this present day, I think probably slightly weaker. I think that a lot of her videography is definitely shared from a lot of historical values, which is definitely a good thing. But I feel like she needs to kind of find her own space a bit more. But in terms of her message, I think I can totally relate. So I'm gonna have to hit her with a 3.5, somewhere between the 3 and the 4.
Got you. I think we can generally say that the room really appreciates the album. But I think with Little Simz, she kind of poses like an interesting like conundrum, in the sense of you have MCs within the UK scene who are very popular and who are on the tip of everyone's tongues, essentially. But then you have Little Simz, who's been in the scene for almost 10 years, more or less, and only seems to be, you know, kind of getting her flowers now. Like, why would you say like that's the case?
I think Simz is sick, and I think that actually she's been internationally recognized for a long time. So when I say I listened to her since maybe 2015, 2014 time, she was collaborating with US artists back then.
Yeah.
And I think that actually on a global scale, she's been recognized and understood as an artist maybe before here. Because if we're sitting in a room in London and we don't know who Simz is in 2022, that means she's been slept on hard in this city. And actually people in LA know about Simz, people in
Africa.
In New York, Africa, like they know about Simz. Like actually maybe hip hop has been neglected in this country in a sense. Like grime has been very much pushed to the forefront as much like as Afro beats and other genres now. But actually maybe hip hop has been slept on to an extent in this country. To maybe we've looked outside too much and we've looked at the US and we've kind of looked that way for who are the hot artists. But actually when I say Kendrick was getting big at the same time as Simz, like they've been around the same amount of time. Simz has been this hard for a long time, and lyrically, like there's not really many people in the UK you can actually tell me stand up to Simz. Like she's actually a hard artist. Like lyrically, there's a lot of lyrics that will go over your head, and when you listen to it again, you're gonna hear something different. Yeah, she's sick, absolutely sick. But I think being a female artist in this country is hard. Being a black female artist in this country is hard. Being a hip hop artist in this country is hard. So maybe that's where she's been slept on to an extent as well.
Got you.
But she's like, come on. Like, if you look back, like, she's got the body, like, she's got the actual body of work. Yeah, she's got the body of work. She's a hard artist with a lot of content, with a lot of exposure, and actually, the UK maybe is sleep when it comes to actual quality hip hop artists in this country.
Is there anyone else who wants to speak on that?
I'm one of them people that slept on Simz, right? Because like I've never ever heard this music before. This body of music has been for like 10 years or whatever. So there's a reason for that. And then only because you touched on a grime music scene, which I do know, and like with the grime music scene, why that was very powerful and very like prominent in what you see today, and it started more than 10 years ago, a lot of years ago. In East London, a lot of people was formatting and patterning for their own people. So the things that was beautiful, they was promoting. And so like if Little Simz isn't out there in the way that she should be, it's down to all of yous lot that know already. Like the same way my man was patterning to me all the time. You got to listen to this. You have to hear it. You have to hear it. You have to hear it. That's what we need to be doing and setting the buzz on the ground.
I was going to say, adding on to that, I agree. I think that like hip hop, like in terms of rap, or I don't know if I would define her music as conscious UK rap, but I just feel like the success of an artist commercially is half between playing the market and half between actually being an artist. So I think she's an amazing artist, but I think the reason why she's not given the notoriety that she rightfully deserves, because there's people who have literally less depth in their music, who get a lot of notoriety, who don't put in as much work as she does. So I definitely agree, but I just feel like the market has changed, and that kind of sound of rap, you know what I mean?
In the case of the market, then, like, who would you even say is her target demographic? Because, like, for me, like, it surprises me that the UK doesn't endorse her in the same way, like a Dave or...
I personally, if I just be honest, I think right now, in terms of female rappers, the thing that is commercial, and I think has always actually been commercial, is sexualization. And I don't think that fits her personality. And I think that's where the issue comes, where she don't get the props that she deserves, because, to be a Cardi B or to be a Megan Thee Stallion, I don't think that they necessarily always want to do that type of music, but they have to, because that is what the market is showing right now. So I just feel like she's losing out, unfortunately, because she's not willing to sexualize herself, which I think is actually a good thing.
So I think there's been more recently acknowledgement that the UK overall just haters, full of haters.
Go on.
I'm sorry. This is a nation full of haters and people who love suffering and just reject enjoyment. I think we are very...
Why do you think
I think we are very bad at giving people props. I think we think like someone saying I'm good and here I am is like a ick for British people. I think you get called bait, you're doing too much, you're begging it. So I think we're as the UK, are very quick to criticize their own. I think even more heavily than they criticize something from overseas. So that's already there. Add on top of that, she's a woman. I think sexism is massive, especially in rap, hip hop.
So you
female
think
rappers
would
don't
be a lot
get
different if she was a man.
If she was a man saying this, people be falling over themselves.
For Little Simz.
For Little Simz. Listen to the lyrics. And I know people said, I didn't come here to fight anyone, but like, I'm so surprised that people are calling, like saying 3.5. I just think for something to be good, it doesn't need to be in your face or obvious. I think things can be epic and subtle. And like the opener of the album, Introvert, it's big, it's got that big sound. You can imagine like going to a show and hearing those drums and that build up and that anticipation. But then as human beings, we're not always on 100. There's other sides to a personality, there's other sides to being. And I think she's just given her all in this album. And I don't know how much more she could have given without then forcing it. I think she's made this music for herself and she's just sharing it with us, and it happened to resonate with people, and that's why it's blown up.
Here we go.
I really, really agree with the sentiment that, like, if Little Simz was a guy, like, I feel like she'll be a big artist, like big. And I feel kind of bad for not rating her a 5, because I think the album musically, like the production, is actually phenomenal. But for me, I feel like the reason why I would give it a 3.5, I disagree with the fact that like she could have gone deeper, because there's a lot of questions that I ask about her, you know, or about her experience. Not saying that she didn't go deep, she did, but you know, for one thing I would say, if I was working with her and I said, okay, given like development or creative advice, I'd be like, okay, why don't you actually make a stance about your sexuality or how you feel about your sexual identity, and make music about that and the trauma or the experience and the depth of that. I'm not saying you have to, but I'm saying that if it was me, I would like go there.
Can I, and I'm going to pass my mic over there in a minute. And I'm going to ask, if she was a guy, would we be discussing how sexualized the music is, or would we be discussing how far her music talks about sexualization? If she was a guy, we wouldn't be. First and foremost, we wouldn't be. So the whole premise of this whole narrative is sexist. Let's be honest, it is. And like, what more do you want? Like, I would actually want to know, what more would you want her to give here? Like, be specific. What more should she give on this album to make it a 5 out of 5 for you?
Can I
ask that? Can I just ask that and get a response?
Like for me, yeah.
Please.
Like for me, yeah. Like I gave it a 4 out of 5, yeah, because firstly, I think Baseline is a phenomenal project, right? I think it's a great project, yeah. But I think with what kind of separates it from a 4 to being like a 5 is I see her being on like the same trajectory as like a Lauryn Hill, right? She gives me that Lauryn Hill vibe, not just in terms of cadence or flow, but just conceptually, you know. But when I listen to Miseducation of Lauryn Hill, that album, it grabs me by the throat and then it slaps me in the face, you know? And I think, for me anyway, personally, I don't want to be speaking for anyone here, that's what's missing between this album and that. Like, I think this album is great, right? But if this album had like those tracks which really just like got me going, more so from an emotional and just like a feeling standpoint, then it would be a 5 all round. But that's not to discredit the project, because I think it's great in and of itself, but I just think that's what is missing from it, you know?
I have so many questions from your points.
Go for it.
Because I'm like, okay, Miseducation of Lauryn Hill is a classic album. I don't even want to put adjectives because they will swear and they would be, that's an epic album, right? Yeah. What gives you that vibe from this album, first and foremost, or from this artist? Tell me that.
I think conceptually, I think in terms of the things in which he tackles, I think it's so brave.
Be specific. Go on,
like, for instance, let me finish. Let me finish. Like Woman, for instance, yeah. I think it's such an iconic track. And I say that from the standpoint of being a man, right? Because when I listen to the song Woman, right, it's a celebration of women, right? But it's a celebration of women being women, not women relative to men, you know? And I really dig that as a man, because it's like, do you know what? I appreciate you for being you. And listening to that song, I thought in and of itself was so empowering. Another song was the song which was referencing her father, right? I thought that song was so great as well, because she isn't even really going all in on her father. In fact, she's almost like giving her father her pass, right? And then realizing that, you know, in projecting all this stuff on her father, she's giving him all the power. Let me reclaim some of that power back, you know? And I think that's so powerful as an artist, which is why I liken her to Lauryn, because Lauryn in and of herself tackles very powerful topics, right? But I just think that the only difference between her and the Lauryn is that Lauryn's music just kind of jumps to me more. But I think that Lauryn is a rare case, because I think Lauryn would have made it in whatever industry she fell in because she just has that kind of energy. You know, if she was an author, she'd probably be the best author. If she was an actor, be the best actor. She just has that kind of engine to her that I feel like Lil Sim maybe doesn't as much. Lauren's just more charismatic.
Do you know what it is? I want to pass the mic to one of you over there because I feel like I can't give this the full justice, but I feel like comparing somebody like Simz, who actually has more albums than Lauryn Hill,
Yeah.
and actually bangers on every album, to somebody like Lauryn Hill who has a classic album that we're all gonna live through, being that she was older than us, because actually all of us probably in the room are younger than Lauryn Hill, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
And she's speaking about experiences that we're going to grow into, and she's given us that guidance. Simz can't provide that for me personally because she's younger than me, first and foremost. But she actually is an amazing lyricist who's got longevity in terms of how many albums she's put out and how many bodies of work she's produced amazing tracks on. I feel like it's almost unfair to compare her to a classic album like that. And I feel like if she was a male artist, you wouldn't actually be comparing her to this album.
A couple of things I just want to address.
Go
so,
ahead.
I think I want to pick up on the point about talking about women in hip hop and rap and hypersexualization and all of this stuff. I think we need to remember, yes, of course, there is like the fact that commercially certain things do sell, but also we need to remember that these people are people and they're allowed to express all sides of their personality and they're allowed to put out whatever music they want. Secondly, in terms of like making a comparisons, we also need to have a conversation about the standards that we hold women to compared to the standards that we hold men to. I know I accuse Britain of being haters, but yeah, I'm a hater myself. I don't listen to male rappers. I'm sorry. Like the way that people would give their lives for Kendrick, would give their life for J. Cole. J. Cole said he didn't read, right? And yet people are like, this is amazing, this is the best. This, lyrically, if you sit down and you listen to these lyrics and you listen to the stories that she's telling, she is given above and beyond. I know someone mentioned before, like, explore your sexuality, go there, talk about this. Sexuality is just one part of one person's being. I don't go out and advertise. I don't know how many of you will enter a room and declare their sexuality to people. I don't think we need to demand certain things from certain people because we find it salacious or interesting. I think she's given so much more, far more interesting topics up on this album, and I think it takes sitting down and listening. And I think perhaps the reason it really touched me is because I can relate to her so much. The album is called Sometimes I Might Be Introvert, but we're talking about expecting her to give her entire soul and being and everything, and give out her deepest, darkest secrets or whatever. But she's already given so much else. You can give without giving the nitty-gritty about topics that we find scandalous or whatever. I think she's given more than I would ever expect an artist to give when you actually listen to the lyrics.
Would you then say that I'm at fault at, or not just myself, but people like myself, we're at fault at kind of like throwing expectations on her and comparing her to someone like Lauryn? Would you say that that's kind of sexist in and of itself?
I think it's just a bit too, like, the body of work in and of itself on its own. We're talking about comparing her to the greatest female artist that we consider, and then rating this album based on that comparison, rather than let's look at this, let's look at the lyrics, let's look at the beats, let's listen, like, what do you actually think of it on its own, outside of comparing her to other female artists?
Cool. Liam, pass it to this lady here, and then Wolf will come to you afterwards. Oh, yeah. We'll come to you first, go on.
I was just listening to what everyone was saying, and I just think just having this conversation is really powerful because it brings up a lot of issues that happen in society that we shy away from. And the fact that she's created this album and it's brought us together to talk about it and how women are seen in general. If you're at work and you're a woman and you're delivering a speech or you're delivering a presentation, people will fault you on small things that they wouldn't necessarily fault a man on. And when we think about Drake and Kendrick Lamar and J. Cole, who are we comparing them to that we see as a great male artist? So, for example, Michael Jackson. I don't think Jake's ever been compared to Michael Jackson because people would be stupid to do that. And I know it's not. I know it's rap and
two
R&B.
different
And
styles.
I know it's different areas, but I do think that. I don't know. I just feel
We all
like
do agree that's a ridiculous comparison. Yeah?
it is okay. It is a ridiculous, as in like the different areas. But I'm just giving an example. Like, who do we see as someone Drake would be compared to if we're considering Little Simz to Lauryn Hill, for example? That's my question. Because.
Pastor, we'll go with you, Mike, and then after we'll go with you, Wolf.
All right. I don't want to incense anyone, yeah, and I don't want to put Little Simz in a box, right? But going back to Jordan's response to the sister's question, yeah. Look, miseducation of Lauryn Hill. Let's be honest, it set the standard for female empowerment.
It's one of the greatest albums of all time, like across every column.
So would you say that it's just an inescapable fact that that's the measuring stick in which, you know, female empowerment music will be measured against?
I disagree. I don't think I'm personally in a position to say what female empowerment music looks like or should sound like, right? But what I can say is how it comes across to me as a man, right? Like, there's artists who I think jump on a particular wave in terms of, or if I say this, I'm going to get this kind of popularity. And then there's artists who say this, and for me, I feel like that's what they actually mean. And for me, Lil Simz and Lauryn Hill fall within that camp. I'm comparing Lil Simz to Lauryn Hill, right? Because it's a reference point which makes sense in the sense of we have an artist in the face of Lauryn Hill who can compete with other rappers or other MCs irrespective of gender. And I think that's the same with Lil Simz. I think that they're fighting the same fight. Like, Lauryn Hill was fighting that fight in the US, and Lil Simz is fighting that same fight over here, which is why it's taking the duration as far as the career goes to get the flowers that I feel like she deserves. I think she goes toe to toe with any and every artist from the UK easy. I don't think that there's a conversation there, right? But I think that as far as archetypes goes, Lauryn Hill is the one which most familiarizes, at least myself, with her experience, because I think that they jump out of the category of just being a female MC and is really in the conversation of just being one of the greatest MCs, you know?
Unfortunately, I actually agree. And, you know, I personally think, I don't think it's that crazy to compare her to Lauryn Hill because, you know, Little Simz, the thing that I really love about her is she's an amazing writer and an amazing lyricist and an amazing rapper. Do you know what I mean? Full stop. Do you know what I mean? And Lauryn Hill is one of the, in my opinion, one of the best rappers in life, full stop. One of the best lyricists, in my opinion, full stop, in life. Compared to Jay-Z, compared to, she's for me up there with Tupac. So I don't feel like comparing her, comparing Little Simz to Lauryn Hill is that, I actually agree that I do believe Lauryn Hill has been done dirty as a black woman by the industry, yes, several times. And I think Little Simz is been done dirty here in the industry, because I feel like she's better than Dave, she's better than Skepta, she's better than most.
She's better than all of them,
in my opinion. But what I'm saying, for me, the way I rate artists' work, whether it be theatre, film, I rate it on impact. Do you know what I mean? So for me, I felt like she does have more stories to tell. She has more depth of experiences to tell. And as an artist myself, not necessarily a musician per se, but as a theatre artist and a fine artist, I know that being more vulnerable is always the key to get great art. That's just my opinion as an artist, as my practice. And the more raw you can get, and I think the comparison is Lauryn Hill, when she was putting out her lyrics, she was so raw. Do you know what I mean? Whatever she was going through, that whole situation where she was stuck in a love triangle, she was in love with a man. We've all been there when we've been in love with somebody and we don't want to be. Do you know what I mean? And when you get to that depth of experience in a song and expressing it, it does have an amazing impact on society and people. And that's why I feel like Miseducation of Lauryn Hill is so powerful. And I felt like I was feeling that at some points within what I was listening to or what I've heard of Little Simz. But I just feel like she can go even more raw. Do you know what I mean? I feel like even though she's been done dirty, yes, but I also think that sometimes in your weakness is where your power lies as a person to use whatever thing you have to even make a bigger statement. What she says holds more weight because she's a black woman. Do you know what I mean? So I feel like she could punch harder sometimes, not all the time.
Yeah,
I appreciate what she gives.
Yeah,
and I really fuck with it on a deep level. Like, but I feel like, especially as a gay person myself, I just feel like I don't get any of that experience. You can talk about like what Dave talks about on the ends as a person, you know what I mean, without a father. But I want to hear something as a queer black person as well. I'm not gonna lie. That's what I want to hear.
So you think
know,
she can
to a
kick in
certain
the door
extent,
more?
I'm not saying that she's queer. I can't say that, but that's what I feel like she resonates with a lot of queer people. Do you know what I mean? But she never really goes to that depth. So that's why for me personally, do you know what I mean? I feel like she could go more raw, but I appreciate what she's giving.
Got you. Let's go.
All right, yeah. I want to just say that an artist should be able to kind of define themselves and be who they are without having to kind of conform to what other people think they should be, right? And I think gender, sexuality, race, whatever it might be, she's just getting a message across ultimately. And she should be viewed and treated as an artist. We shouldn't have these demands upon her. She's creating a beautiful piece of art, essentially. Something that's come from her heart, clearly. And she's really thought about it. So I think there's a lot of kudos to be given. And I think one of the reasons why, you know, coming back to that original question, why didn't she, like, get more press or, like, get more popularity or sales or whatever it might be? I think, obviously, there's the discrimination. If you look at our history, there's patriarchy, there's racism. So women of color, you know,
so
women of color
things operating against her.
Exactly. And our whole history disadvantages people who are already minoritized. So a person like her is a woman of color, a black woman who's full of emancipation, liberation, strength, you know. That kind of conviction, it's hard to kind of find that. And therefore, she's had to go through this independent route, this kind of different way of going about things. And I think that's how she's become more successful, you know. Just over time, she's kind of been able to kind of hone her craft in a really humble way. And I think she actually talks about those kind of things where she's had, like, for example, kind of talks about shame, her kind of past, the kind of eras of kind of like fame and various kind of things like this. She really navigates those difficult kind of conversations. And I think actually there's a lot to be learned from Little Simz. I reckon she should be viewed like, I think one of the people are saying here, in the same category as Jay-Z or Nas or any of those kind of rappers, because she has a lot of lyrical depth and content.
I'm gonna step away from the comparisons because I think they're unfair, completely unfair.
Go on.
And I'm just gonna say, do you know what? I think what this album did really well is that she spoke about trauma in such a beautiful way.
I agree.
She made music out of trauma, and that is a superpower. It's an absolute superpower to go through an experience where she's talking about, you know, her relationship with her dad in the way that she did, and she made it into something that was really relatable for other people who might have either similar experiences or maybe different experiences, but still she made it very relatable, her experiences. And I thought, as a lyricist, she's on a different level. As I said, for me, she's been on a different level from Day.
Yeah.
I think the only thing that's held her back is the fact that she's a British national. I think had she been from anywhere else, we wouldn't even be sitting here having these conversations where we're comparing her to anyone, because actually she's bar for bar, par for par, she's absolutely outstanding. And the fact that she's actually making real music that compares real life experiences, like traumatic experiences, that is relatable to many people, shows the kind of artist that she is, that she actually does dig deep. She does dig deep. Like, how can you say someone doesn't dig deep when they're making a song about the trauma between themselves and their dad? Like, that's just, it's something so beautiful to talk about. The space that she created between herself and her dad, that when the table just elongated in that video, it was beautiful. It was actually just poetry in motion. Like, it was poetry in motion. Like, the distance between them in a metaphorical way became very visual, and I just thought she's actually outstanding. She really represents what her message is in terms of her experiences. I think I take the points here about she could dig deeper and maybe who she is in terms of her identity. I don't know. Maybe she could, because you know what? I related with everything you said, and I thought it was a really good comment that you made there. And, you know, I can't take that away. Like, that, maybe that's the truth right there. I don't know who Simz is in terms of how she identifies, but I don't necessarily think she owes me that as a listener. I feel like what she's produced is beautiful. Yeah. It's relatable. It digs something in me in terms of my experiences, my lived experiences, and that I can relate to. And it puts it into a sound that I can listen to and I can resonate with. And I think that's very, very beautiful.
I think in terms of what you addressed as far as her kind of like touching certain themes, and what I really found interesting with an album which is so kind of emotionally vulnerable is that she comes across as someone who's very emotionally stable, in the sense of that she's kind of like come to terms with certain things that she's been confronted with, and she's able to articulate that through her art in a very healthy way. There wasn't really too much sense of victimization through her music.
Lauryn Hill, what you're missing when you're comparing Simz to Lauryn Hill is that Lauryn Hill is like top tier vocalist. She's not just a rapper. She's a top tier. No. Step away. Listen to what I'm saying. She's a top tier vocalist and a top tier rapper. That's a double threat. Little Simz is not a singer. She's a rapper solely. So comparing her to somebody like Lauryn Hill, who is a top tier singer and a top tier rapper, who actually has produced one album that is an absolute classic. And I'm not saying that she hasn't, no, I'm saying one. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying she hasn't got other tracks that are absolutely banging. Yes, she has. But that one album is an absolute classic that will go forever and ever and ever. Timeless music.
Yeah.
That is a one album. Little Simz has had many albums where actually you can pick tracks from every album. Maybe not one body of work that is as top tier as The Miseducation, but literally who is going to have an album like The Miseducation? Because that is one of those once in a lifetime albums that you produce, and you know when you drop an album like that, you ain't making nothing better than that. You're not making anything better than that, because that is okay, you at your top level at 23 or 24, and you're not topping that ever again. Little Simz has proved time and time again the lyricist, the artist that she is. And I'm not saying she's better, because I'm not comparing her.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is that in her own right, no, I'm not. I'm saying in her own right, she's an amazing artist. She should be given respect. She shouldn't be compared to people who are different types of artists, and she should also be respected for the message that she puts across in the way she puts it across. And with due respect, if you haven't listened to more than one album of her, I'm sorry, I'm not hearing it. You can't hearing it. You don't even have an opinion. If you heard it for the first time tonight, I'm not even hearing you.
I think
not hearing you.
I think it's also really important to have this discussion within the context of her previous bodies of work, because this speaks a completely different language to what's been put out before, and I think to what's been put out by anyone before. Because when you look at the subject matters that have been touched on, we already talked about her relationship with her dad and the trauma of that. We talked about how, well, we haven't yet, but she talks about in songs how fame has pulled her away from being there for friends and family. She talks about how she imposter syndrome, about how her personality may not necessarily be obvious in terms of being able to thrive within the industry that she's in. And then she also talks about, actually, no, I actually backed myself and this is how I made it here. So I think we need to, I really don't want to talk about other people, other artists. We're here for Little Simz, her album, and we're talking about the songs. I think the only comparisons that could potentially be valid about her and what she may put out next and what she's put out before. But I think we need to really recognise that this represents someone who's been through it, has put in the work, studied, and knows her craft, and has put out something that I think is incomparable to anything that's been put out by a British artist.
Are you talking about this project?
This project.
I agree.
I don't think I can compare this to, and
I
don't think we should, because we're here to talk about the music on its own. So rating it a 3 or a 4 because she has somewhere to go and grow,
you
fine.
don't think that's fair?
But at the same time, are we doing that because we're setting higher standards? is that rating actually fair for what we listened to and what we saw? Because what are you faulting? Because visually, look at the videos, look at the musicality, look at the choreography, the set design, and I think comparing it to Ape Shit is a bit of a stretch, because when you look at the rest of the video, because she's in a museum, I'm sorry, but when you look at the story she's telling outside of the scenes that are within the museum, there's shots of her, obviously, to represent her being in her old neighborhood, about how she was creative, and then the community came together, supported her. I think it's so much deeper than, oh, she's dancing in a museum and it's an epic scene. I don't think that's a valid comparison.
There's nothing wrong with the video. The only reason why I'm comparing it to that. So, for example, I'm not going to lie. Beyonce, she's the queen of replicating. She knows what works, what doesn't work, and she used that to her advantage. So the fact that Little Simz is also seeing that and doing the same thing, I think is commendable. No qualms. I'm not. That's not a minus to her at all. But 110%, I can see the influence. I can see where she's getting her inspiration from. And it's not like there's a small snippet here, there's a small snippet there. No, she's not being original in that video, but nor is Beyonce as well. That's and that's it. I don't think it takes away from.
I think if that's your take from that video, then it's a very superficial. No shade. No, I think that's a very superficial take, because it's not.
It wasn't my only take, but when you're saying about
that being the main take,
when you're talking about her message, I hear you.
Yeah.
When you're talking about where she's coming from, I hear you. When you're talking about her videography, I'm like, yo, listen, it's been replicated over and over again. She got it from Beyonce got it from Prince got it from somebody else. As in, like, it's nothing new underneath the sun. So in terms of her videography, it's not original. Facts. In terms of her message, that's original, and I can appreciate that, and I do.
I don't think I forget any aspect of this project. So if I'm thinking about a song that has a music video to it, I'm thinking about the visuals that she's put in, married to the lyrics, married to the choreography, and how the dancers are hitting the musicality and sending a message. It's more than just she took inspiration here and you can see shots are similar there. It's about the whole body. I think we need to respect the whole of it, rather than just saying, because I just don't think that that's adding much to say she drew inspiration from Beyonce.
I was just gonna say, annoyingly, I know that it's annoying to compare to Lauryn Hill, but I feel
don't say the L word.
Hold on. But I just want to make this point, is that I did feel like Lauryn Hill could have done more. I felt like she had more to give, and the more she had to give was the women empowerment part of it. Does that make sense to you? Yeah. I feel like she had more to give. Do you know what I mean? So I feel like every artist always has more to give. There's no artist who comes and just so I even feel like comparing to Lauryn Hill. I feel Lauryn Hill, and I think that the comparison is, for me, the biggest thing is how black women are being done dirty in the industry. I feel like that's where the conversation should be. So I don't think it's a bad thing to compare. I think sometimes you have to compare to see where the gap is, to see how to actually, because it's true, I agree, Little Simz is lit. Like, I was at her last album launch, whatever. Do you know what I mean? It was lit. Like, she's lit. Do you know what I mean? I love just the production alone. Honestly, I would even use this as references for my own work sometimes when I make music. Do you know what I mean? But I was saying, I do feel like I want to hear more from her. I want more of her as a person. Yeah. I want to understand you more. I want to know more about you. Like, not in a bad way saying that I demand you, but I'm happy with what you give me. So I even want to know more. I want to relate to you more, especially as a black woman. And I think that even the fact that she is doing similar things like Lauryn Hill, bringing up the same things, asking us to ask the same questions about black women in music and in the industry, I think it's an amazing thing. So I don't think that the comparison is necessarily a criticism.
I think my main point is that I'm not calling comparisons criticisms. I just don't think I think we spent too much time talking about other artists and not enough time talking about Little Simz, the songs, the beats, the visual. We're not actually talking about her and what she's done. We're saying, oh, this reminded me of this and this. But yeah, also Little Simz is great too. I just can't stand like the constant comparisons, and I also think we expect far too much from black women as well. So saying you want more and you want more, it's like, haven't black women given enough? Mm-hmm. this is authenticity. This is literally like somebody has, for the past 10 years, done their thing, paid their dues, if that's such a thing, and has decided, do you know what, I'm going to go into the studio, I'm going to feel moved, I'm going to give what I want to give, and really pay attention to detail. There was no wasted lyric. There's no song that's a filler. If you actually take the time and listen to it and actually feel what she wants to portray, I think you'll understand that it's. I don't think she was like, okay, this song is going to be the club banger, or this song is going to be the summer track, or this is going to be the love song. It's genuinely a body of work, and I think it needs to be discussed as a whole. And I don't think enough credit is being given for that, for the pure artistry that's been delivered here.
And you know, I really appreciate that, and I think that's a very important point that you made. I think that the album in and of itself, as you say, is a great piece of work, you know. But I do think that with such a great piece of work, it does trigger reactions as we have seen today, especially when it's produced from someone who you can argue is on the margins, you know. And I think that's very important point which you've made. But I think the kind of the response from everyone in the room is just as important as well. Yeah, you know.
But like, just listen to every single lyric and you'll see she pours her whole heart out.
Yeah,
just saying.
Of course.
What more can black women give? We already give too much.
Outside expectations, what I would say is that she's delivered every time in terms of growth, in terms of development as an artist. Like somebody that I've listened to, as I said, for a lot of years, like maybe 7 years or so, I would say she's grown on every project that I've seen, and this latest project demonstrates like where she's at the moment, and I'm happy to hear that actually people want to hear more from her. Yeah, if you've been around for like 7-8 years and people still want to know more about you, that means that you've got a good business plan in terms of how you're releasing your music and your material. And I also agree with my sister over here who's saying actually I feel like we're fine-tuning our critique for black women, and I feel like that's also why we don't win. So I feel like actually let Simz live, let her live on her own terms. 100%. And actually we want more. That's a good thing. And actually, let's see what happens over the next few years, 100%. And maybe we'll be sitting here critiquing 3 albums in the time, you know, 100%. To talk about where she's at. So appreciate you anyway, brothers.
Amen to that.
I just wanted to add while I was firstly, I've really enjoyed the discussion, but I really, really agree with the points you were just making about seeing Little Simz and this project here and like getting rid of all the comparisons. I think even maybe the comparisons are maybe a little bit of a reflection of what she faces in the music industry. I bet those names are coming up in the same way in like meetings where it's like, but have you thought about this? Could you be more like that? And like this kind of thing sells. What I really appreciate about the album is, firstly, I gave it a 5 because I think it's perfect front to back. I think it crosses over lots of different genres, and I respect the opinion of like wanting to hear more. But for me personally, like when I listen to it, I think there's a lot of introspection and there's like a lot of vulnerability. And just looking at it from the outside, I'm like, I'm just kind of amazed by it, because to spill that much is so, to be like that raw with it, you give so much already. Like people are scared to do that in a conversation with their friends, and it's here in the art. So I really appreciate it for that. I really appreciate it for the intro and outro. And the last thing I just want to say is like, when you're coming up against all of that, like, oh, you should be this to be successful, and then you see someone like Little Simz make this album, it gives me personally like a lot of good energy, and I like to see it, because it just shows us, like all of us, that we don't actually need to bend or be any other type of way. We just need to give ourselves truly
and be ourselves.
Exactly. And let it compound over time, and you'll get where you're going, innit? And she's there right now. And I really love this album.
Oh man, do you know what, man? I think this has been such a great discussion. You know, I think it's exposed a lot as far as perception goes, from the standpoint of a woman, particularly a black woman, how it's perceived through the eyes of a man. you know, and I think to your point, like, I think it is kind of unfair, kind of comparing her to, you know, the most prominent reference point that we can actually compare her to, you know. But I think with that though, it really does kind of come as a badge of appreciation for everything that she's done up until this point, you know, because I don't really think comparisons as such an artist comes for free. You need to put in the work, and you need to be able to reach that kind of level of artistry for you to be even considered in those conversations, you know. But that does bring an end, you know, to this event. I do thank everyone, you know, for coming through. I think the discussion was a lot better than I could ever had imagined, you know, and I really thank you all for coming. So let's give us all a round of applause. But, you know, thanks again for coming out, and, you know, we really appreciate it. Okay, everyone, take care and enjoy the rest of your night.